Jim, welcome and quick sit rep for the viewers. How are you going?
Catherine, yes, good evening. And I'm going well, thank you. I had my first day back at the office today. First time I've put a suit on, Catherine, since March of this year. And I've got 2 more chemos to go. And hopefully, if everything continues the way it's trending now, I should be operational by the end of September. So there you are.
There you go. Well, I'll text you afterwards and put you on a degree of notice to move, Jim. So, but that's good news. Good news, and love to Anne as well. Look, Jim, cutting to the chase, on this anniversary of the first use of nuclear weapons, we've seen some recent images of what appear to be China expanding its arsenal, or at least what may be silos. Just walk us through whether we're at a greater risk of a nuclear exchange than, say, during the height of the Cold War. My own view is that their conventional overmatch inside the second island chain now means only the US is likely to default to nuclear weapons. What's your thinking on that?
Well, we live in a situation now where there are roughly 9 nuclear powers, and with most of those powers, there are established systems. During the Cold War, of course, between the US and Russia, there were very great and well-established systems, well-practiced systems, so that each country knew how far it could go. Getting information on anything about Chinese nuclear capability is pretty hard. We know they've got roughly 14 Jin-class nuclear submarines of the 80 roughly submarines that they've got, and that each one of those subs has got 12 nuclear weapons. Each one of those weapons are able to be retargeted, multiple warheads able to be retargeted. When I look at the figures that China's got, I doubt whether anyone really knows, and whether these 100 extra possible silos out in the West are anything but a decoy. There might be 200 to 400 nuclear weapons in the possession of the Chinese, which is, and for that, put them into the ground in fixed positions is a bit strange, because they're DF-31s, that big, enormous missile we see on parade, are road mobile. And of course, the US has a 13-to-1 roughly advantage over China. And there are certain meanings for this, I think, and we could talk about what that means, if you like, Catherine.
But Jim, we've discussed China's rise in the past, and I was delighted to see Minister Payne today pushing back on what was effectively a set of demands that would have just made us essentially a vassal state. So that was good news. But look, you and I have discussed the China rise and the fact that there have been war games conducted that are not particularly optimistic for US Indo-Pacific Command. This week, there's been a lot of criticism of the Joint Strike Fighter, in addition to some of our other platforms. As a very experienced defence thinker of influence within the government, what do you think the government's pathway on submarines, frigates and Joint Strike Fighters is from here? And have we bought the wrong aircraft?
Well, those 3 capabilities, the subs, the frigates and the Joint Strike Fighters, they were purchased at a time when our thinking was in the last 75 years, post-World War II, up to a couple of years ago. They were all purchased with the mindset of the fact that we could choose when we go to war. We could choose what higher capabilities we maintain, but we didn't really believe we were ever going to use them. And so if you say, have we got ourselves in trouble over the JSF and the subs and the frigates? You've got to answer the question, well, not if the war that we go to was like what we've had to go to for the last 75 years, light little wars where we go away, the ADF goes away and does good things for alliance reasons. But of course, you and I, Catherine, both know that now that has changed. That has changed significantly. And we must now prepare for a very serious conflict, which may occur. It may occur in our region between China and the United States, and we may be collateral in that. So in relation to the Joint Strike Fighter, there is some truth in the ability of that aircraft to, if we're going to use it as an interceptor, to gain certain heights from which it can shoot down the main Russian type or Chinese type. The subs, of course, are monstrously slow in coming, but you've got to hand it to Peter Dutton. Our new Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, is running the Defence Force, and that's what we have needed for only about 50 years, to my knowledge. And he has said that, yes, we've got the Collins for today. We've got the Collins after a midlife update to get us from today into the attack class. But, of course, the attack class is coming very, very slowly. And anyone who thinks we will not have had a war between now and 2054 in which we need those subs is stark raving mad. We need military capability. We need it much, much faster, but we also need to increase the resilience and self-reliance of the nation as a whole. There's no point us having the best military in the world if we can't feed our people, if we can't move products around Australia, if we can't import and export. So these are the issues which are absolutely enormous. And I've got to say that Minister Dutton is the person to take those ideas and run with them in the future.
Well, Jim, and there's no skirting this issue. We've got to be able to hit harder with greater combat weight further away from our bases. And that was where I was going with the JSF argument. Is there a case now to go to the next generation of unmanned bombers or buy a heavier payload capacity bomber off the shelf from the United States? Or alternatively, something you've talked about, sovereign munitions. Do we need to get long-range ballistic missiles for this nation?
Well, we may need all of those, but the problem is until our mindset and the bureaucratic and leadership mindset is in the new strategic environment where the days of wars of choice have gone and wars of commitment have arrived, until we can get our mind into that environment and then do a strategic analysis, who knows? This is the thing. It really is a problem because so many of us, me included, so many of us immediately go to a material solution. It may be a lot better if we can't get the new B-21 bomber for 10 years, and anyhow then we can only afford 10 of them. It might be better to get a bloody large number of missiles. But we haven't done the analysis. You know, the biggest thing that I think should be on the priority list for Australia, and that is because we are in a grey zone conflict now, and because that grey zone conflict can be easily increased, and because our ports, our seaports are our single biggest vulnerability, we need to get more mine-clearing ships to keep our ports open and guarantee to our customers that we can bring ships in and we can send ships out.
That's a point very well made. Look, Jim, just to close this out, yet another review ongoing arising out of the Brereton inquiry. Isn't enough, like processes of cultural change? We've been talking about this for 10 years in the ADF. Our enemies must be laughing while we're debating about pronouns and culture. Is it time not to just bin this stuff?
Well, I still have contacts within the ADF, and I look down on my mates within the ADF, and it's still a first-class fighting machine at the fighting level. I would have thought that we had as much information as we can ever imbibe on culture. So the question is not, is this about culture wars? The question for the ADF is, can you win the next war for us? Can you win the next war?
But there looks to me, reading that document, and there were some points that were obviously important to make about conduct in Afghanistan, but the fact is, I thought between the lines, Jim, was an inference that they want to take the special out of special forces. Now, you know what that capability can do. Are you arguing within the government that we've got to preserve the status of a standalone special forces capability?
That's not an issue that's come up to my knowledge. I've been absent, but I would have assumed I would have been contacted had it been come up, had it been a question which government was asked. If Minister Dutton decided to give the awards back to the soldiers on the basis that only a very few bad eggs, both at the operational level and at the command level, made errors, therefore the majority fought well, why are we knocking ourselves out over culture? Why don't we
Absolutely.
appoint good, strong leaders and lead in the traditional way that we have led? And if anyone in the special forces or the conventional forces doesn't like it, we'll move along. And we've had far too much of that out of the special forces. We're losing a lot because of the lack of focus on war fighting.
Absolutely.
I have great faith in Angus Campbell. Now I think he's got to deliver for us a war fighting solution.
On that note, Jim, I'll wish you very well for the weekend. Thanks for joining us again tonight. I know our audience always love your insights, and stay well and look forward to seeing you back in the building, if COVID permitting.
Thanks, Catherine. All the best to you and to your viewers.